Greetings, everybody. Good evening. It's June 4th, 2020 at 9:14 p.m. My name is Thomas. I'm the author of 710 Peasants Publishing, as well as the Canaclatch Altruistic Strain Hunter blog. Tonight, we're gathering here on Zoom to take a moment to talk about a few subjects that are very central within our collective narrative here in the country of the United States of America. We just lived through some unprecedented experiences together as a human race, and we're now seeing things becoming more and more unprecedented, so to speak. And people are jumping to a lot of conclusions. People are creating a lot of different uh, grasping at straws types of moves and knee-jerk reactions. And so we're going to go over some of the information that is related to the last few events that have occurred. And before we do that, I'd like to just talk about the cognitive dissonance camp. Uh, it's a social, it's between people, it's a camp. Obviously, we get down to topics that induce cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a feeling that you get when you're trying to hold two ideas that do not correlate with each other. They cannot operate in the same reality with each other, and so the mind constantly seeks to bring one above the other, or bring a more prominent idea to the forefront so that the cognitive dissonance can be dissolved out. And so when humans are met with new information, they have to correlate that with what they already think they know. And so a cognitive dissonance camp is just a way for people to come together and start to take in topics that induce this sort of inner resistance. And I bring up things that are what I call thought catapults, so that people can take those with them and essentially think about them or feel them out. And the idea is that these thought catapults are concepts, they're ideas in themselves, and that they may or may not be jiving or congenial to concepts you already hold within your mind. And so, like I said, some people are able to take in new information very fluidly. They learn very quickly. They're able to adapt very quickly. Other people are very hard to go through this process. They find that it's easier to cling to habituated ideas or kind of like normal ways of thinking. And so we're just going to go through some of this stuff, because a cognitive dissonance is something that you should not run from. You want to try to engage it front on, and that's kind of what the whole field of philosophy really is to engage cognitive dissonance head on, so that you can learn how to think or to conceptualize the different venues of thinking. And so we're not going to get into all that tonight, but what we are going to get into is the narratives that are not being talked about. And I will notice that my internet connection is a little bit shaky tonight. So if you hear me kind of just pause here, it's just so that the internet connection can sort itself out. I'd like to start off here by offering a few moments of gratitude and silence to all the individuals who have been affected adversely by the events that have unfurled in front of us. I'd like to offer a debt of gratitude to all of the humans who have come before us and have given us wisdom and knowledge that we can apply in this moment of very hard times and adversity. I'd like to give a blessing to all the people who have found themselves at a loss for how to feel or what to think, or even had a loss in their physical world, where it's a business or a home or a loved one. And so let's give a blessing to all the people that are feeling very low vibratory feelings right now, be it fear, be it anxiety, be it judgment towards others, anger. And let's just have a moment of silence. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you joining me in that little focus of presence within all of this. That's what we're really going to need and have to apply ongoingly. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you. If you're listening to this later, just give yourself a little pat on the back and appreciation for yourself for even being here. So let's start with the date of March 13th. You have 313, and then we go on to the May 26th, Memorial Day. So the notice of the RONA was given in early March, and then the notice of this police brutality and loss of life was given to us on May the 26th. And one of the most difficult aspects of our situation right now is that we've been under a state of highly stressed. It's a highly stressed situation. We've been put in a very hybrid state of being, and this has everybody on edge, of course. What does that do to people when they come upon new news or come upon something that is very emotionally trauma inducing? Well, obviously it's going to have a hybrid effect, and that's something that I would like to give a debt of gratitude for everybody who's feeling their emotions very deeply right now. That's something that we can be thankful for as a nation, because as a nation, we've been numb to a lot of things for a long time. And this is bringing a lot of things to the forefront so that people can focus on them and feel them and move through them, both as individuals, as groups, as communities, and then onward and fractal out to a state, to a nation. And so the process is unique for everyone. I need to just take a moment here and open up a new program here. You're going to lose the screen share momentarily. The very unfortunate aspect of our process through this is that people are becoming polarized. And what that polarization seems to be doing is taking people to wanting to assume that their position is good for others. And of course, that's a moral authority type of position. And when you take a moral authority, you're assuming what you know or what you think or what you feel is good for someone else to think or feel. And that leads to some animosity between people. That leads to, I guess, what you would call passions flowing back and forth, because the individual that is projecting themselves forward is going to get met with resistance. And so what we have is a lot of projecting and a lot of resistance going on right now. And, for better or for worse, we're going to have to work through that so that we can, essentially evolve our mode of communication so that, there's more or less a capability in front of us that wasn't there before. If I can make these come up a little bit more effectively. I don't know what's able to be seen here on the screen. This is not sharing quite the way I'd like. Let me see if I can make this go. The word that I was hoping to show here is pathos. Pathos. And this is from a rather dated dictionary. And the reason why we go back a ways into the 1700s and 1800s is because it allows us to see the way that language was used when our country was brought to be. And why is that useful? Well, it allows us to have a continued narrative, because how words are used in our contemporary time because we're using them in that context. Well, when you go back into history books or go back into older dictionaries, you get a little bit of a contrast. And that's all I'm looking to do right now. So let's just read pathos. It says, a suffering, passion from the Greek word to suffer. passion, that which cites emotions and passions, especially that which awakens tender emotions. And so, if we just stop right there, I'd like to just say that Event 201 was shadowing the triggering of a pathos. And so the pathos is the contagion, and the contagion is a thought form. And the thought form is what they call an egregore. And you share the egregore around. Anytime you have a thought inside of your mind, that thought can lead to emotions. That sets off a little bit of a ripple effect in emotions. And so you're seeing that happen on a collective basis where people are literally contagion, excitement, contagion, anger, contagion, demoralization. And that's really the crux of it, is that it's a contagious demoralization through a pathos. And so what we're doing is we're all collectively living through something that is contagious to varying degrees. And so there's different ways that you can take in information and data. And the interesting thing about this word is that it says contagious warmth of feeling, action, or expression. Pathetic quality. Now, when we talk about pathetic today, it kind of has a negative connotation, right? Well, pathetic in its most basic definition, it has more of a neutral place within language. However, we don't really use it in its natural expression. We use it in its negative. You're a pathetic person, meaning you're given to passions or you're given to emotion. Well, what about this where it says feeling, action, or expression of warmth, of contagious warmth? What an interesting thing, right? Because warmth generally denotes something that is nice. It's positive. Well, what an interesting thing that we're working through this feels very, very not nice. It feels very, very, very unwarm. But the crazy thing is maybe not enough time has gone by. Maybe not enough of an understanding has been realized. And so the next word is actually pathway. How crazy is that? Sometimes these contagious pathos will actually become a pathway to higher, I'll just say it, higher avenues of communication or modes of communication. And right now you're seeing people take a moral authority saying that if you don't do this, then you're this. If you're not doing this, then you're this. And so there's this massive sense of polarity happening. And that is what it is. It's bound to happen. These are all, levels of interactivity that happens in a degradative environment, in a degradative collective matrix. And so let me just get off of this photo if I can and see if I can't hide this meeting controls so that I can see what I'm doing. This isn't working at all. Let's try it this way. There we go. The next word I'd like to just go over, because we haven't really got into the meat and potatoes of what I'm trying to cover. I'm just trying to preface all of this so that people can have a little bit of a stair-step understanding of what's in front of us. I don't want to just lay it out there for you because it's going to be a lot harder to absorb. The word on this little slide, if I can get in here just a little further. Oh, it's not letting me zoom in just a little further. Unfortunately, let's go this way. No. The word is peon, P-E-O-N. And it says one who travels on foot, a foot soldier, a pawn in chess, a footman, a person of low rank, as specifically one traveling on foot, a pedestrian, stable, a day laborer, a servant, especially in Mexico, a debtor held by his creditor in a form of qualified servitude to work out a debt, a serf, a piece used in a game of chess representing a footman, a pawn. So the word that we're trying to work with here is called peon, and it allows you to understand that it's a entity of very low rank or very low status. When you think of a pawn on a chessboard, we're all familiar with that as being the lowest ranking footman or mover on a chessboard. So let's go to the next word here. It's called penury. Penury. It's just above peon. It says hunger, poverty, need. One who works for his daily bread, a poor man. And it says from the Greek word to work for one's daily bread, to be poor. Absence of means or resources, want, privation, indigence, poverty. I didn't say indignance, I meant indigence. It's a different word. So penury, very, very good word to know right now. Let's go on to this slide here. When you're talking about being made into a peon, it really helps to not do it by force. If you make someone believe that they're a peon, or even essentially, what's the word, where you're not doing it, but you're faking, you're like a fighter feigns. When you feign making someone be a peon, they will be resistant to that. And especially so if you do it by force or if you do it in a very, very fast, rapid succession. So essentially ruling entities, ruling powers do not like to use a fast, rapid approach, nor do they like to go head on with the individuals they're looking to subvert. And when you mean subvert, you mean put them in a lower status, to literally put them in a lower drawer or in a lower caste or in a lower level than what the ruling entity is at. And so when you talk about subversion, you're doing this through a mental or psychological means. This is a far more efficient means for getting someone to accept their status so that they do not resist what you're trying to get them to do. And so with ideological subversion, you have this process of psychological manipulation that brings the individual or the group or the society or the nation through a series of steps. And each step is designed to just make a process happen. It's referred to as death by 1,000 paper cuts, or a ripple effect, or 1,000 ripples on the surface of a still pond. It's something that individual acts are very hard to perceive, whereas larger acts are much easier to perceive. So the strategy is to add up a whole lot of small acts so that they stay below the level of realization of the receiving end. And so when you talk about demoralization, this is something that happens every single day in the media. It happens every single day in movies and in music. And so the media or the content actually has a demoralizing narrative to it. And that is not arguable. That's something that's very, very well known. Individuals who go down the rabbit hole with regards to rhetoric or propaganda or subversive content media, they'll realize very quickly that the vast majority of what you're surrounded by in a contemporary culture is extremely subversive. And it's meant to demoralize you and change the way you think about things without you even realizing what it's doing. And that's where you get into the term wetware, which is WETWARE, wetware, just like software, it's wetware. It alludes to data that's being transferred to your subconscious. Subconscious is symbolized by the waters or the oceans or the great depths. And that's where you go when you sleep, to your subconscious. That's where you sometimes will be able to go when you meditate and have out of body experiences when you're either harmed or you faint or are close to death. And so the wetware phrase is used to denote content that is meant for your subconscious, not your conscious mind. And so what you'll realize after a while is that the content that is in our society and in our culture and in our contemporary egregore is extremely subversive. It's full of wetware, and it's meant to demoralize you. And that's all fine and good as long as people are living comfortably and going along and they're very, habituated and they got everything that they want and their life is, kind of ebbing and flowing the way they think they would like it. Well, obviously on March 13th, all of that was changed. And so our lives became destabilized. And then through the March 13th to April 13th, April 13th to May 13th, May 13th to May 26th, we found ourselves in a cyclical kind of spiral of destabilization, demoralization, destabilization, demoralization. And a lot of people saw it as a crisis. We're facing a crisis. And so what does that do? Obviously, that demoralizes you even more. It gives you feelings of fear, gives you feelings of anxiety, gives you feelings of the unknown, just not having a confused feeling. And that destabilizes you. It brings you into your lower levels of vibration. And that destabilizes you on an individual level. And that's why throughout all of what we've already experienced since March 13th, the people who have been able to face the three levels of workings here, the demoralization, destabilization, and the crisis, are the ones who have had very confident people around them, very sturdy people around them, very understanding, accepting people around them. And that's why you'll eventually you'll feel like community is by far your most virtuous resource whenever you start being brought through a destabilizing experience, be it a natural disaster, be it some type of scenario where it's economic, whether it's cultural, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what the actual thing that you're facing. Community will always be your most virtuous resource. And that's kind of where the individuals that are out there really feeling strange and feeling fearful, they're likely also realize that they don't have really great community around them at all. They don't have anybody they can lean to or look to or to communicate with for that sense of stability. And that's where we're finding out who our pillars are within our community. And within a crisis, there are individuals who are anchored down into the earth and they're not going to get blown over by what is in front of them. And those are your pillars. Those are the people that are going to be extremely valuable within a crisis situation. And everybody is, looking very, very closely at their network of human people within their communities and their support groups, is who is the real pillars and who are the real leaders. And it's very very important that people understand the whole flow chart of the ideological subversion, because it's happening right now, but not everyone is going to be able to agree on where we're at within the process. A lot of people will go right to arguing that we're in crisis mode. And I would be very, very hesitant to go down that path of alarmism, because we've lived very, very comfortable lives here in America. No matter what you want to say about the Patriot Act and the lost liberties all throughout the war on terror and all of that, war on drugs, the war on immigration, this whole spiral of wars, we still have been able to live a very comfortable existence. And so a lot of people will jump to the idea that we're in crisis. Well, we're in a situation that is degrading every single day, but we're still very much in the demoralization and destabilization modes. Everything that we have in front of us is something that can be curtailed. We have a situation that can still be helped. Well, I just want to bring up a philosophical, premise that a lot of great minds have put forth, is that you generally do not want to make big choices when you're emotionally compromised. And so when we're in this mode of demoralization and destabilization, when you go out and act very reactively, there generally isn't going to be a good outcome. And so we have to address that both on a individual mode as well as a community mode, a state mode, and then a nation mode. And that means that the leadership shouldn't be reactive. It means that mid-level managers and power holders should not be reactive. And then the lowest ranking people that hold no title or responsibility should also not be reactive. Emotion that is based in anger and all of these things are not going to allow us to make rational decisions that are vested in our best interests, both as individuals and as communities. And so when an individual says, oh, well, we're clearly in crisis, there are crisis aspects to what we're experiencing. However, the larger challenges that we're facing right now, they're not there yet. And that's where we have to have optimism that if we have maturity within this and we know how to respond instead of react, we can still save a lot of suffering. We can still keep this from curtailing, I should say, the spiraling into more and more degradative crisis mode negativity. Now, the bottom block on this is normalization, and that happens after a major crisis. Well, we're very familiar with how that actually works, because 9/11 is still, very raw within a lot of adults' memory. Well, we understand how TSA and the background checks and all of these extra letter alphabet agency, Homeland Security, they expanded government. So the expanded government experience became the new normal. And this is something that Orwell spelled out in very clear terms, that the propaganda that is needed to sell the new normal is extremely effective. I mean, it's designed to subvert people. It's designed to get people to adapt to it. And that's all that I'd like to say about that, because we're already seeing propaganda in our media that has to do with the normalization of what we're going through. And, there's a lot of people that are out there on their social networking that are doing a posturing behavior, a signaling behavior, and they're saying, this is me. This is what I believe is good for me, and these are my virtues. Well, they're showing that this normalization propaganda is being very effective on them, number one. Well, they're also showing, too, how reactive they are to what they're seeing in front of them. And that goes to show you then how many people do not have pillars within their network, within their human groupings, their community. And so you see all of this signaling online, and you have a portrait, a virtual portrait of who is perceiving reality and how. And so normalization for them becomes something that they're virtue signaling out, and then becomes more normal for more people because it's a contagion. And we're right back into that event 201, where we're not dealing necessarily with the physical virus, although that may be a construct of what we're going through, or a subcontext of what we're going through. We're dealing with a psychological contagion, a mental contagion. And this is a thought form, and this is what's called the egregore. And so people are trading it around freely and signaling it out to others as though they're participating in it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this to show. I guess that goes back. This will work. Yay. Okay. So the aspect of signaling out is just like fashion. It's just like any form of marketing, where you're using color and language to